Welcome back to the weekly VR news, where I break down everything going on in the VR industry, prepare you for this week's upcoming VR game releases, and then focus in on a few major stories. Today, we have the Quest version 50 update introducing some much needed UI changes, plus there are references to full body tracking. A handful of exciting games are dropping this week, Meta identified the source of their Quest 3 leak, and we have plenty of other great stories to go over. As always, I am Mateo311, and this is your channel for everything VR related. This video includes timestamps and links if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor, Kiwi Design. They currently make my favorite Quest 2 Elite strap, which comes in multiple different versions. You can add an extra battery pack, high quality headphones, or even both. They also have other products like Valve Index style hand straps, and they just introduced a brand new RGB stand. Your controllers and headset magnetically connect. There's a charging indicator so you'll know when your headset's ready to go, and there's plenty of different RGB color options available. There's a link to Kiwi Design down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support this channel. Okay, so I wanted to start today's video off with a mini Barbaria review. I'm actually moving away from doing reviews on this channel because they just take up so much of my time and my audience just doesn't respond to them as well as my normal content, but Barbaria is definitely worth spending 30 seconds on. It's an excellent combination of arcadey first-person combat and strategic base building. It's almost like Gorn meets Clash of Clans. You'll be unlocking new mechanics for quite some time, and both the gameplay loop and replay system is absolutely amazing. Building your own personal realm and strategically designing it to eliminate invaders is extremely satisfying, and I've been jumping in for a few hours every night for the past week, and it's still just as fun as when I started. Now I could definitely spend a lot more time discussing this game, but let's move into this week's new releases, starting with Gun Jam. Gun Jam takes the classic first-person shooter genre and puts a whole new spin on it by turning it into a rhythm shooter. Now I know you may be thinking of Pistol Whip, but this has more traditional elements, and you just have to shoot to the beat of the music, which of course is a pumping soundtrack. Now this definitely looks unique, and I can't say I've played anything quite like it, plus I love the art style that reminds me a bit of Borderlands. But if you prefer a co-op shooter, we have Dropped at the Cabin, and it's an excellent option. It plays like Call of Duty Zombies with a few extra twists, and it's designed to be an extreme challenge with maximum replayability. I've put a few hours into the beta, and it's an excellent combination of fighting off hordes of creatures while scavenging for resources, strategically unlocking new equipment, and having to keep your base powered in order for an extraction to eventually come. The gameplay is extremely frantic and fun, and you can expect to die a lot before ever completing this. But if you just want a straight single-player shooter, we have District Steel, a classic FPS-inspired game that'll have you blasting your way through an underground facility, mowing down robotic enemies with an array of deadly weapons, and using special abilities to bend time. Very few developers are putting out PCVR exclusive titles these days, so I'm definitely interested to see what this game has to offer, and I'm a sucker for a straightforward FPS title. But speaking of wondering what a game has to offer, an official Squid Games VR title is coming. Squid Games VR will be coming to Sandbox VR arcade locations in late 2023. Now, if you're not familiar with this highly popular Netflix series, it's a series of deadly physical challenges, and that sounds like a perfect concept for VR. Maybe there'll be a deadly game of red light, green light where you have to run across the room, or something completely unexpected. We'll just have to wait and see, but I am definitely intrigued. Now, in other unexpected news, Swords of Gargantua is returning on March 2nd. It'll once again be playable online with the Quest 1, 2, and PCVR headsets, and they're also adding an offline mode. Now, this is definitely an interesting move, and I'm wondering why they're relaunching a game that they sunset last September, and it looks like Thirdverse is becoming known for questionable decisions. They previously shut down Swords of Gargantua right before launching their next title, Alt Airbreaker. This negative press definitely didn't help the launch of that game, and I think now you can understand why I question their decision making. Well, this is at least good news if you enjoyed that game and miss it, but there's no additional information if they plan on expanding this title besides the offline mode. Now, in less unexpected news, Meta has been battling for nearly 15 months to acquire the studio behind the fitness application Supernatural. Back in 2021, the FTC opened up an investigation into Meta based on their high acquisition rate of VR studios, which appeared to be monopolistic practices. Now, the FTC's attempt to deny Meta from acquiring the studio was denied by a judge, and they have not appealed it. So as of February 8th, this acquisition is now official. Now, for months, I've been operating under the assumption that this would happen, and fully speaking as if Meta already owned the studio. While Meta is indeed gobbling up a lot of VR developers, it's hard to prove that this this is having an overall impact on the VR tech industry itself, or at least that topic is highly debatable. But what's not up for debate is the popular VR basketball game Gym Class is currently expanding. A few months back, this game went from an App Lab title to an official Quest Store game, and also raised $8 million in additional funding. Well, later this year, it's getting officially licensed NBA content. You'll be able to get team-branded apparel, authentic in-game items, and replica basketball courts. Now, this will be a DLC package that retails for $19.99, and if you're currently unaware, Gym Class is available in a free-to-play version, but there's a $15 in-game purchase that'll give you access to customizable courts and full-body avatars. So it looks like they're going with the we'll give you a free taste method, but then once you want some more, you're gonna have to pay for it. Honestly, I think it's a great approach, as people who enjoy this game will encourage their friends to try it out for free, and then over time purchase more and more DLC. Now, before we move into some meta topics, I just want to spend a moment on some VR gamer toxicity that I'm seeing lately. With the release of the PlayStation VR 2 only a week away, VR discussions are getting extremely heated lately. Now, I recently made a video on this topic that I'm extremely proud of, and I personally feel that it is straight down the middle, discussing the pros and cons of all VR platforms. Now, I'll put a link to that video up if you want to check it out, but this is a topic I really want to emphasize. Regardless of how you feel right now, the VR community is still quite niche. We need to stick together and support all the different platforms out there. I'm starting to see lots of PCVR master race stuff and some console fanboyism. It's honestly looking pretty ugly out there, and if you can't admit the fact that each platform has its own pros and cons, then you're just straight up lying to yourself. So enjoy whatever headset you enjoy, but let's keep it civil and support the entire VR community to help it grow. And now let's move into our final topics, which are all about meta. First up, the company has reaffirmed that even with all their recent cuts, the Quest 3 is still releasing this year. It'll also include some features from the Quest Pro, mainly full-color AR pass-through capabilities, and Meta said this would be a new standard going forward, seen on all of their headsets and eventually their AR glasses. Now, this is also supposedly Meta's year of efficiency, so I'm wondering if that'll do anything to the price tag of the Meta Quest 3. Now, a lot about this headset, including a detailed CAD render, is already known, thanks to Sid Bradley and his internal leaker. Well, after a lengthy investigation, Meta has identified that individual and officially cut ties with them. Now, as expected, this was a third party rather than an official Meta employee, and it's quite rare to see a company make an official statement about leaks, so it looks like they're sending a message to the rest of the VR community. Now, leaks overall are definitely an interesting topic, and it's hard to say how I feel about them overall. I like to be able to make informed decisions, or at least know what aspect of the technology I should examine the most. For example, if we hear the new Quest is getting a much beefier GPU, the first thing I want to do is examine game performance. But at the same time, I don't want everyone's thirst for new knowledge to have an overall negative impact on the industry. But one thing is for sure now, a very reliable and credible source of upcoming meta information has now been lost. And let's move into today's final topic, Quest Update version 50. If you're signed up for the Meta public test channel, you may have already got a glimpse of some of the updates on the way. For starters, we will finally be able to actually poke the menu itself. For a company that put such a strong effort on hand tracking, it's surprising it took so long for this to happen. I think we could all agree that the current method of navigating the menu with pinches and swiping your hand is just mediocre. Having a screen docked closer to you and being able to physically poke it feels a lot more natural, especially in VR. Now, there is also something quite interesting found in this update, and that's a reference to full body tracking in the permission section. Meta allows you to control which applications have access to each one of your devices. This includes things like the microphone, file storage, and both eye and facial tracking. But for whatever reason, there's now an option for full body tracking. So we'll have to wait and see what Meta's planning for us, and what, if any, additional updates will be released in version 50 when it moves from the test channel to the public.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
We'll see you guys on next time.